You're listening to The Other 50%, a Her Story of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. This is the podcast where I talk to successful women in entertainment and hear their stories. This episode is brought to you by the entertainment payroll company Extreme Reach. They have the most comprehensive suite of tools and services to support all areas of media and content creation, from tax incentive support to accounting software and payroll services. I've seen their software. It's beautiful. If you're producing film and television, you should call them and tell them I sent you. And as a bonus, they are committed to including and promoting women, and I could not be happier that they are a sponsor of this podcast. This week I interviewed writer-director Monique Sorgen. After graduating from UCLA, Monique worked as a director's assistant in television dramas and comedies. She then made a short film called Pants on Fire, which garnered international distribution and led to writing jobs such as Blind Date and for variety and alternative shows on Comedy Central and VH1. Monique has also written the feature films The Babymaker, a Chinese remake of the film Love Stinks. In 2014, she was selected as a finalist for the ABC TV writing program. And during this time, Monique also completed her first novel, How Long You Should Wait to Have Sex. Her most recent directing work includes several music videos, a web series pilot, and 3 unscripted series for the international network Fashion One, which she produced in the Philippines. There is more, but I will let her tell you in the interview. Also, she has many stories about being the only woman in a writer's room. Let's just say it wasn't awesome, but it does seem to be getting better. Now, a brief disclaimer. We conducted this interview outside in a park, so there is plenty of ambient noise of children, traffic, and an ill-timed roofer across the street. So pretend you are on a nature walk and having this conversation with Monique. It will be worth it, I promise. You can find us at theother50%.com for added features, photos, show notes, and the merchandise. I just put in some great coffee tumblers and mugs. You can also listen on Apple Podcasts and all the podcast places. And if you haven't already, check out our other 2 podcasts, The Kiss My Age Show, which is where women of a certain vintage, grown-ups, talk about anything and everything and all the things that matter. Hosted by Lasta Drakovic, Karen Samuelson, and me. And if you fall into that category, please join the Facebook group and join in the conversation. And Exit 38. It's a show where Emily Van Dyne and Sean Patrick Hughes, who seem to be opposites from a political perspective, discuss the issues of the day while trying to find common ground. All right, here's my conversation with Monique Sorgen. Have a listen. Okay, so let's start with, I know you do a bunch of things, but tell me, what's your main thing? What do you do?
I am a writer-director in film and television, primarily. That's my main thing that I do.
That is pretty fantastic.
So, brief history, I went to UCLA. I directed some stuff at UCLA. I did a play that was a one-act play that was really successful, and they needed an assistant to a multimedia play. So it was going to involve combining people from the film. The film, it was starring Laura San Giacomo, this play at UCLA.
Oh, great.
She wasn't there. It was like a guest director and guest actors for like a special play that was written by the head of the acting department or something. And so it was a multimedia play, and I ended up getting that because of the one act that I had directed as the assistant to the director. And she was so like shocked because she sat me down and she was like, okay, I need a lighting person, I need a stage design, I need some people from the film department to do the multimedia parts, I need this, that. And like the next day I was like, okay, well, are you available for a production meeting this evening because I've got everybody? And she was like,
she's like, what?
So what happened from that was I was just on the verge of graduating anyway, and she hired me immediately to be her assistant as a television. She was a television director, it turned out. She had taken a 4-year hiatus to be with her new baby, and she was just going back, and she goes, I just got a call from my agent. Have you heard of this show, Deep 6 9? And I was like, well, I've heard of a show called Deep Space Nine, and that turned out to be the show that she was doing. So I actually began my career as an assistant to a director in television, and we did both, single camera shows and 4-camera shows, which is very unusual that directors do both. But for me, it was like the most amazing on-the-job training as a director, working in both dramas and comedies and space dramas. So we also got to do special effects and visual effects and stunts, and I basically got exposed to everything you could possibly imagine in the television world as a director's assistant. And by the end of it, I was in charge of sort of like typing up her shots, putting them in the most time-effective order, and then she was like, okay, now you need to go direct a film, and then you'll be able to direct television too.
What an incredible opportunity out of the gate.
Yeah, I got really lucky, and I tend to believe that, I mean, look, I worked really hard. The fact that I had a production meeting ready with her entire crew the next day, that showed
helped.
something.
Yeah.
And the fact that I had done a one-act play, and other people had done one-act plays too, but I'm the one that the department recommended to be her director's assistant on her big Laura San Giacomo play that she was doing. So, I did do the work to get in that position.
Is it when timing meets preparation?
Yeah, that's what they say. That's what they say, but sometimes, if I look at the rest of my career, I wonder, because I feel like I've hit timing and preparation a lot of times and still nothing has happened.
Well, unconscious bias is still there.
And I think that's what ended up happening a lot of the time, but at the time I wasn't aware of it, because right out the gate, I had worked really hard and I got this great opportunity. I worked really hard at that opportunity, and she was 100% prepared to mentor me through, whatever I did. And I ended up making a short film, and she was an executive producer on it, in the sense that she helped me actually get some of the actors from our television shows to be in it. So I actually had names, and I actually also had one name who I knew from being at UCLA, because we were at UCLA together, and he was already kind of breaking, and I was kind of a part of giving him some of his first breaks, not his first break, but I gave him some jobs early in his career. So, and now he's a big deal. Now he plays Black Lightning on the CW. So, so it was partly, it was a combination of all, but also having been on those sets, I got the sound person from Star Trek. I got the props person from Babylon 5. I had a script consultant from a sitcom we worked on starring Brad Garrett, which maybe nobody remembers, called The Pursuit of Happiness. So I had all these professional people in all these roles on my first short film.
It's incredibly networked.
Yeah, because I had been working in television for a few years already at that point.
And your first experience was with a female director coming back after having a baby. All the things that would make her a unicorn today. And did you think, oh, this is how it is and how it's going to be?
I didn't think there was going to be any problem with me becoming a director. I didn't think it was weird. I mean, I definitely saw a lot of sexism on the set. People were, the crews would always be like, oh, she's changing her mind. And I'd be like,
oh, God forbid.
I typed the shot list, I'm holding the shot list, and we're doing the shot list. So I don't know what you guys are talking about, It's just your job as a director is to keep an open mind to suggestions the DP makes, to suggestions the actors make, to suggestions to the writers make. So to have changing your mind be an insult in the first place is a weird thing, So that was really confusing for me. But then I learned that that's something that crews tend to say about female directors. I've heard it's gotten better in the last few years since everyone's started to become a little bit more aware, but that was one of the big insults women would get, and I was confused by it for a lot of reasons. One, because changing your mind is collaborative.
That's supposed to be a bad thing.
Yeah, and two, because she wasn't changing her mind. If anything, she was just pretending to change her mind, and then we were still doing the shot list we had prepared. You know what I mean? And I had it in my hands, so and I had prepared the shot list. Yeah. So I knew that wasn't even true in the first place. So I didn't think there would be any problem. So I made this film. I had some stars and upcoming stars in it. It was 28 minutes long, which I thought was the right length for someone who wanted to direct half-hour TV.
Seems like it.
And the problem was, what I learned was, you can't get into festivals with that length, because it's too long to program a short film generally that's over 15 minutes. So I struggled to get into festivals with the film. I only applied to 8, because at some point you're like, this is a waste of money. And also I only applied to the 8 biggest ones, because I was like, my film's awesome, which it was. It turned out
I'm going to Sundance or nothing.
Which it was. Well, I saw people that I knew from my networks who were more connected than me, because their parents were the head. Well, their uncle was the head of Paramount or whatever, who had really bad films and were male and looked like a poor man's version of Brad Pitt, who did get into Sundance. And then I was like, oh, Sundance is easy,
And you were misreading it a little.
I was misreading a lot of it, because I didn't realize yet. Because I was at the same time as I had all this experience, I was also still really green.
Yeah.
So
it's an even playing field.
Yeah.
I did really well.
Yeah, exactly. So, but my short film did end up getting international distribution and played on television and airlines all around the world. And this
So
was
there.
at a time before the internet existed, where it was like much more difficult to figure out how to distribute
Yeah,
a
how
short
did you
film.
get that?
Well, I was really driven, and I like asked around, and I found out there were basically 2 companies distributing short films. I applied, both of them made me an offer, and I took the one that gave me the better deal, which was apparently also an unheard of deal that I got, which was a 50-50 deal where they paid for all of the marketing materials.
Well done.
So, looking back on it, I don't know. I didn't know. I was just like, this is the deal I want. I have another offer. Give me my deal. And then they did. So basically, this company, which no longer exists, but it was a company called Tapestry International that I went with. And there is still a Tapestry production company that I think still exists. That's a different company. This was a short film distribution company. And what they would do is they would basically take a catalog of short films to all the markets around the world and sell their short films. And it turns out that in a lot of other countries and on airlines, people are programming short films, or they were. Now there's a lot more venues for short films than there were at the time, but that was their whole business model. Like, my reason why I really wanted that deal was because, you know, the standard deal where like you pay, like you get 70%, but they charge you back all the marketing. I just felt like, well, you could just charge all the more marketing than you do, and I don't have any auditing on how much marketing you're doing. So I'd rather take a lesser percentage, actually, which was 50%, and let you deal with your marketing. And that way you can control your budget. I don't have to worry that you're just holding all the money.
And then spending all your money on auditing them.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, because there was no way to tell how much marketing they were actually doing. Were they doing 70% and taking up all my money with marketing, or were they just doing 10% and saying they were doing 70%? So that was kind of my
And here is the black hole of Hollywood participation.
Right, well, and that's why I just was like, you know what, I'll take a lesser percentage and you guys pay for the marketing. You know,
smart.
but ultimately I got 50% and I didn't have to pay for anything.
Beautiful.
But they were marketing mine in a catalog of books with other shorts as well. So it wasn't like all the money I don't think they spend that much. Like they had to make a poster for the page. I had made a poster already. You know, they had to like make a page in their catalog.
Just for your film.
Yeah. And it was a catalog of like 200 titles. So, you know, anyway, point is, it ended up on like a very prestigious European channel, which is really good for me when I talk to people in France and Germany, a channel called Arte, which is sort of like the high art film channel.
Fantastic.
In France and Germany. It ended up on Air Canada. It ended up in like Norway. Well, it was called NBC, so I was like, oh, I got on NBC.
To say that.
Yeah, but it was like Norway Broadcasting Company or something. You know, so it played all over the place. And that said, you still can't make your money back, you know, but I made some money back toward the budget.
And it's a great calling card.
Yeah, and it was a great calling card. So I thought from that, like, okay, I have all this experience. I've shadowed for 3 years. I'm
ready.
Made a film that got distribution and had stars and is funny, you know, and give me some jobs.
Yeah.
You know, and it did not happen that way. Like, I'd take it to sitcom people. They'd be like, oh, you need to direct a play. Oh, you need to do this. You need to do that. You know, it's like you direct a play. You can't get them to come to it.
No.
You know, like, and I don't know. Anyway, it did help in that it helped me. It was one of my samples that got me my first writing job. But like, I was trying to use it to get my first feature. And so like, that was another thing that I learned at the time. It was like, everyone was like, oh, what's your feature now? What feature are you gonna do? And I'm like, well, I've been working full time for a woman who doesn't need to sleep and making a short film, so, you know, on a very squeezed budget. So I haven't had any time to actually write another
So here's
script.
also my 10 scripts.
Right, I had nothing. So I learned, you know, and now I always tell like people just starting out, when you make your short, don't forget to have a feature under your arm, because otherwise you've just wasted your time. So basically,
great advice.
Yes, I mean, I think most people should know that, but people just starting out don't necessarily know that. So that was a big lesson I learned. But that said, I wrote a feature. I quit my job. This is where I start to sound like a crazy person, but like, it was like a very time-consuming, exhausting job. I wasn't learning anymore. So after 3 years, I quit that job. I did try to get other jobs as an assistant, but it was hard because I almost had like too much experience. So like, I went up for another directing assistant job for a guy who was a big screenwriter who was about to direct his first feature, and his comment to me in the meeting was like, well, I feel kind of intimidated by the fact that you're gonna know more about how to do this than me. And so I didn't get that job.
Wouldn't that be helpful?
Well, you would think, but you don't want your assistant to tell you what to do. So,
Okay, good luck, buddy.
So yeah, anyways, no, he's directed a few films now, that guy, but I didn't get that job. Like I went out for more of those jobs, but ultimately I was like, you know what I need to do? I need to write a script so that I can use my short film to get my feature. So I quit. I went and got a waitressing job. That didn't go well. I'm not cut out for that job at all.
It's a hard job.
It's a hard job, but
really
what's
hard.
interesting? Like I wasn't so annoyed by the customers, because I kind of felt like as a customer, I feel like they do deserve, they're paying a lot of money to be at this restaurant. They do deserve to have every little detail done properly. I was more annoyed, this is just how I was raised, I think, by the other waiters counting their tips at the cash register each time and going, oh, damn it, I got stiffed, or going, oh, good tipper, or like trying to steal your tables, and like, that I was more annoyed by the other waiters, and they're constantly like nickel and diming every moment and complaining about the customers, when I felt like the customers should be right, and the customers so I didn't get along very well with the others.
Hey, you're doing it all wrong.
I was doing it wrong. I didn't have the right attitude about myself. I was actually thinking, and I wasn't that great at it. I'm not gonna, some of those waiters who were like that I didn't like their personalities, were like much better waiters than me.
It takes a surprising amount of skill. That hardly ever, I waited tables for years.
Balancing things, like I'd get very nervous when I had to open a bottle of wine at the table because it was like a high-end restaurant and I didn't want to do the protocol wrong.
And the organization of what to grab when and what to grab when you're walking here, it's a whole thing.
Well, I'm very organized, so that organization part I liked. Mm-hmm. It was just like the balancing things, making sure I don't spill anything or drop anything on the way. It's got a specific presentation that made me nervous. Opening bottles of wine made me nervous, just not giving the customer the 100% full satisfaction service. That was what made me nervous, because I understood their point of view. Like if I'm in a restaurant and you give me bad service, it makes me mad, because I'm spending a lot of money, So, and it's like I'm here for it because it's special. So
were you furiously writing your script while you were there so you could stop?
Well, yeah, because waitressing you only have to do like 3 or 4 days a week, and so and it's also part-time. You only have like 5-hour shifts because they don't want to pay your health insurance, right? So
that's a win-win.
So basically I had like mornings to write, which is when I like to write, and I had some full days to write, and I got my script written, and then I went out and tried to, sell myself in that capacity as a director on this script. And this is another funny story, actually. So my script was a romantic comedy. So you have to put it in the context. This is when Taz was really hot, and all these really edgy films. And I was a very edgy writer at the time, so I fit in perfectly. And my first script was a sort of fantasy romantic comedy about a twin brother and sister who fall in love.
With each other?
With each other.
Are they twins together?
They're twins together. And so it was like this really edgy incest comedy.
Oh my God.
And I was just trying to make it for like $1 million. And there was money out there for that kind of thing. But again, I was green, I was naive. I always had half the money. Yeah. Like everyone kept telling me they'd give me the second half. I couldn't figure out how to get the first half. This went on for a while until a friend of mine was like, Monique, at some point you need to talk about a different script. But by the way, everyone loved it. It was one of those scripts where like people were like, ew, that's disgusting. And then if they read it, they would be like, this surprised me, because I was actually rooting for them to get together, which was my goal. Because when I wrote it,
it's amazing when you can do that.
So that was my goal, and so I accomplished my goal with it, and that's why. But my whole point for writing it was I wanted to kind of like force people to question their own sense of morality.
Yeah.
And that was sort of the theme, but it was actually inspired by a boyfriend who broke up with me. I loved him so much. It was the biggest heartbreak of my life. He broke up with me because I, quote unquote, didn't fit the mold. And so I said to him, what are you talking about? There's
the
no
mold?
mold. I mean, like, if you want the mold, then you should just date your sister, because that's the closest you're going to get. And I was so mad about how he should date his sister that I really actually started thinking about it. Like, well,
that's actually a good idea.
What would it be like if he dated his sister? And then I wanted them to be twins because I didn't want there to be like an age hierarchy, because then it's rape. Yeah. But if they're the same age and they've always been together and they have this close,
and they don't have the power differential.
Yeah, that's why I wanted them to be twins. And so, like, what's more the mold than the person who was raised by the same parents as you, at the exact same minutes, of life experiences as you. So like to me that was like my experiment about like, well, what would it be like if you dated the mold? Could that happen? And you know, could anyone else compete for either of those twins in that world? You know, like,
well, that is edgy and thought-provoking.
Yeah, so basically that was the script I was going around with, and people were really responding very well to it. It was very timely in the sense that that's what was kind of hot in the indie world anyway, not that specific. Well, actually, yes, that specifically, because a few years later, I met someone else who was going around with a script about exactly the same thing at exactly the same time. And he informed me that there were actually 2 other scripts as well. So at the time I was going around with my incest comedy, there were 4 incest comedies going around about brother and sister. So that just is another lesson, which is like...
That's such a funny zeitgeist thing to be
well, zeitgeisty, but also because like I came to it in such a specific way. I didn't know how the other people came to it. And in fact, one day I ran into Eric Stoltz, who I didn't know. I just went up to him and I said, hey, I really want you to read this script. Oh, that was the first thing that happened, actually. So I went up to him and I said, hey, I really want you to read this script. You'd be great for it. And I gave it to him. And like a month later, I get a call. Hi, this is Eric Stoltz. And I'm like, what?
Hey, Eric,
oh, okay.
What's up?
He goes, I haven't finished your script, but I've read like 30 pages and I have to put it down because I'm actually attached already to a script about a brother and sister falling in love.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so that happened first. And then a friend of mine many years later dated a guy who was the third person who had one, and he told me like he had one, and I was like, no way, because he brought up the Eric Stoltz thing, and I was like, yeah, I got Eric Stoltz my script, and he goes, yeah, I had that problem too, and then he goes, and there was actually another one, so that's how I found out there were actually, but it was many years later that I found out about the other ones. I found out about the Eric Stoltz one pretty fast.
Okay, are people still skeptical about collective consciousness?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's definitely zeitgeist. There's definitely collective consciousness. But the irony is that like my short film that I made was about a woman who can't lie. And when it came out, when I screened it at Raleigh Studios, my big screening, everyone loved it. And then 3 weeks later, Liar Liar came out with Jim Carrey, and everyone was like, "Did you rip that off? Did you copy it?" And I'm like, "Okay, first of all, mine came out first.
Yeah.
Only by 3 weeks, but still. Second of all, like."
No.
Do you know how long it takes to make a movie? To write a movie, it took me a year just to write it because the consultant kept saying, "You're not ready, you're not ready, you're not ready." I went back and forth with him for a year, and then it took like 8 months to get this.
This didn't happen this month.
It didn't happen right now. Yeah, so I had to explain that to people. So that was another reason I wrote this like really edgy thing, was because I was like, oh, when you write something commercial, everyone else does it.
Yeah. But how funny that everyone saw Eric Stoltz as the incestuous brother.
Yeah, I know.
He must be having a little crisis. Like, what's going on?
I know, that's good. Because he was an edgy indie actor, and he was also at the time like the guy doing the most amount of movies in a year. Like I saw like some chart where he had done like 6 movies that year, and all the other actors had only done 3 or 4. So probably because he does smaller movies that don't shoot for 4 months at a time. But anyway, so the irony is just that like my movie Pants on Fire came out 3 weeks before Liar Liar. and then I was like, oh, I got to write something that no one else would ever write. Yeah. And so I wrote an incest comedy, and then 4 other people had an incest comedy.
Okay, you're obviously plugged in.
Yeah, so well, that's a good sign. That's a good sign, yeah. So then I gave up on not writing commercial things at that point. I was like, I should just write commercial stuff.
So then what happened?
Then I realized, I wanted to be a director. Now people are seeing me as a writer because I have a feature film and I have a short film that I wrote. If I'm going to be a writer, I want to write in sitcoms because I'm a social person. Directors tend to be more social than writers, just in generalization personality. And I was like, I'm a director, I'm a social person, I should be in sitcoms. So I wrote a spec South Park and got some interest from an agent assistant who was about to be promoted. Actually, this is also a funny story. So I got the script to a friend of mine who worked at UTA. He didn't read it. He just put it through coverage. But then I was hanging out with him and he was like, oh my God, the coverage for your South Park is amazing. The coverage was like, it's better than the show. I was like, wow.
Yes!
And that's actually the level you need to be at to get read by anybody. You have to actually write a spec that's better than the show. And I don't know, I didn't even think it was that good, but everyone else liked it. And so I was at a party, I met this other like young agent assistant at ICM, and I told him, oh, UTA's interested. They said it's better than the show. And he was like, oh, well, let me see it. So then I sent him my stuff. And he wanted to sign me, and he was like, I'm getting promoted. I don't know if it's going to be here at ICM or at another agency I'm talking to, but I'm going to be promoted in the next few weeks. I want to sign you.
Let me put you in my hip pocket.
Yeah, well, let me, I want to sign you. Here's a job I'm going to send you out on. So he sent me out on an interview for a job called Blind Date. Mm-hmm. And by the way, another irony, UTA, it turned out, was not considering me at all. Like, nothing happened beyond me getting amazing coverage. That was the end of the story.
But it worked to say so.
But I said so because I thought they were considering. I wasn't lying. I literally believed, like, this
You
is
got excellent feedback.
I got great feedback. I thought they were considering, but like, my friend who worked there didn't do anything to follow up with it. Like, nothing
He just said, good job.
He just said, oh, congratulations, the coverage person really liked your script, And I was like, oh my God, UTA is considering me. So I said that to someone, and then he believed I was hot.
And then you leveraged it
but
into a job.
But it was an accident. That's what's so funny, is like, but it's a good lesson too. You should say that stuff. Anything minor that's happening, you have to tell everybody about it, because then people think something's important happening in your life and they want to get on the bandwagon.
Right.
But and I really thought that I was going to be signed at UTA at that time. So anyway, so the guy who was an assistant at ICM sent me out on a job for a show called Blind Date, which some people might remember. It's a show where it was one of the first reality shows, actually, where two people would go on a blind date together, and we cut it down to 6 minutes to show the beginning, the middle, and if it was going to work out or not. And then we writers would also then write funny pop-up bubbles about like what they were thinking on the date, and little like commentary at the bottom of the screen, and like make jokes about their date as it went along. And Roger Lodge was the host. Everybody loves Roger Lodge.
I remember that show.
Okay, so I got an interview for that show, which was not even close to being off the ground, but I got an interview for that show. Then during the next few months that followed, my assistant that was working with me didn't end up getting the promotion he wanted at ICM. He was promoted to junior agent, which he didn't want, and he got full agent promotion at an agency called Metropolitan, which I don't think has, it might still have a talent division, but I don't think they have a lit division anymore. They were kind of a sizable boutique agency at the time. So he's like, okay, I'm starting at Metropolitan. I'm sending home your stuff with them. So he was sending them my movie, Pants on Fire, which was a half hour, so a good pilot sample, if you will, that already shows that I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a director, I made things, and my South Park script. So I'm like, woohoo, we're gonna have,
Here we go.
I'm gonna have this great agency, nice boutique agency, just the right size for a first agent. And he calls me on Monday and he goes, Monique, I have some bad news. You can't use the South Park script anymore. So here's what happened this time.
Why?
Here's what happened this time. That Friday that the script went home with everybody at the agency was April 20th, 1999. And that is a day that shall live in infamy because it was the date of Columbine. And the opening scene of my script, which I probably should have said first, was Pip, the little English boy, finally getting fed up with Cartman making fun of him, taking out a machine gun and blowing up the cafeteria.
No,
So that was the opening scene of my South Park script. Which, by the way, at this point was hilarious because it had never been done before.
Right.
So
what a funny idea.
I wrote that scene. I actually think it's been done so much it might be funny again now. But
oh my God.
But like at the time, no one had ever done that. There had never been a school shooting.
Right.
And my script went home with the agents for approval to sign me on the day of the first school shooting.
And now everyone's horrified.
And he was like, we can't use this
No,
script.
never
And I
again.
was like, oh my God. So like my awesome, amazing South Park script was already dead. It's like, so not only is there consciousness with like, so then I started.
But you're also psychic, whatever.
I'm also a little psychic, yeah. Like, and so then I started getting really paranoid. Oh my God, everything I write comes true. I need to stop writing things.
You need to write yourself a check for $1 million. Is what you need to
Right,
do.
that's a good idea. That is a good idea. So yeah, so I mean, that was crazy. The good news so basically what he says, so the only way I can sign you now is if you get the job for Blind Date, which my interview for Blind Date, my first interview, had already been like a month or two ago, and the show still hadn't been picked up. And then I had a second interview where thankfully the guy was really impressed with my short film and almost like in the interview seemed a little jealous that I had actually managed to make a half an hour long short film and gotten that off the ground, So I did get the job, but partly because as a woman, they felt compelled to pay me less. And so I got the job by taking less than other people for being a woman.
Did you know at the time?
Well, yeah, my agent was very upfront about it. Like, oh, well, we can get you this job, but you're gonna have to take, you're gonna have to take this much,
Because that's the way it is.
Yeah, and that happened on my second job too, where they got me less money because I was a woman, and my agent was very forthcoming about it. Like, oh, well, otherwise we can't get you the job. That was kind of the excuse that was used. Was either you take the job for less money, or you don't get the job.
And be grateful and shut up about it.
Exactly.
The agent would make more money if he negotiated better for you.
But that agent was really, I did not like him at all. In fact, one day,
what was his name?
Yeah, one day, he's like now at a very big agency. He later became a partner at an agency. Then he went to a very big agency.
Big deal.
But he's not in. I mean, anyway, one day, like I'd go to meetings, and people would like me, and his comment to me was like, Monique, what are you doing to these people? Why do they like you? And I was like,
what witchcraft are you employing?
Yeah, exactly. That was like the implication of his comment. And I was like,
don't you like me?
Do I want to be represented by someone who doesn't get how fun I am in a room?
Weird. Weird.
Yeah, so that was the beginning of the end for us when he made that comment, which was after the second job I got, which he also got me for less money for being a woman. So the first job was kind of the first time that I believe I was fired for being a woman, because I basically was the only woman on the staff there.
Did you get lippy?
Well, I had a date where I was fighting for the female point of view in the date, and I was like, they wanted me to make the date not a success for the guy. Basically, the date was, the guy had a problem where, like, every time he would talk, he would spit out of his mouth. Some people do that. Like, it's just the way his mouth and teeth are shaped. Like, he would spit when he talked. And so they wanted to make it like the girl thinks he's disgusting because he keeps spitting on her. But the fact of the matter was, the girl loved him because he was so funny about it, and he was so self-deprecating about it, and he was like making jokes like, next time we go on a date, you're gonna bring a raincoat, be all covered in plastic, be like, where are you going? Is it raining out? No, I'm just going on a date with so-and-so, So he was really funny about it. He had her like in stitches the whole time. And I was like, from a woman's point of view, self-deprecating humor is the most charming thing you can be. But they were like, well, you need to write this from a man's point of view. And I was like, oh, but I'm the only woman on staff. I thought the reason I was here was so that I could give that point of view to you. And then I basically got fired the next day for not doing what they said, or for standing up for the other side. It seemed like that's basically what happened. And then after I got fired, they were nice enough to replace me with another woman and a team, actually. And then they got fired, and they replaced them with another woman. And so there was always one woman on the staff of that show, but never more than one, except for the very first few weeks when there was me and another woman, but she got fired before I did. So every woman there was one woman who didn't get fired, the last woman who didn't get fired. But at that point, there were like 20 people in this writing team, and one of them was a woman. So that's what you call a non-female friendly environment. So that was my first like professional writing job.
You're like, this is great. So let's get more of these.
So then you're like, oh wow, I'm not the kind of person. Like, I kind of felt like it was very devastating, because I was like, I'm not the kind of person who gets fired. And in Hollywood, everybody gets fired at some point.
But it's so hard to shake. It's the worst, no matter what the circumstances are.
Yeah.
I can still tell you about when I was fired from a waitressing job in 1990. I'm still mad about it.
Wow. Wow, that's good. At least it was a waitressing job.
Exactly. Who cares?
But it's always like you don't feel like you were in the wrong. Like, I felt like we're doing a show about dating. Do you really want only male perspective? I'm the only woman here to give you this perspective. Shouldn't I kind of tell you that this is the way women feel? And at the time, and I think that's one of the things that is finally changing, is when you stand up and say, well, women feel like this, guys don't just go, oh, no, you don't know what you're talking about. That's not how the world works.
Right.
Now we're finally in a time where I feel like when I say, oh, but women tend to feel these ways instead about that situation, people finally go, oh, really?
Right.
Wow, I didn't know you guys were different. And that's a huge improvement that is
progress.
It's great progress. And it's just like, I've been in this business a long time, and to finally have things be the way they should have been the whole time. Well, they're not there yet, but they're like,
but there's
feel
a
like
shift
they're trending.
happening.
They're trending toward the right direction. So I had that job, and then I got a second job with that same agent. This job was like literally a cattle call. This one was like, you had to go in. They made us write like 10 examples of the show. It was like it was another hybrid reality comedy show where like we would do sort of scripted game show pranks on real life people that we'd pull from the audience. So that one, like, I had to write 10 examples of like a prank I would do. Okay. And then, over the Christmas holiday, by the way. And then based on those 10 examples that I did, I got a chance to have a meeting. And based on that meeting, I got a chance to write another 10 examples of pranks. And then I got the job. And that was the second job where I was told, like, I could get it if I took less money because I'm a woman and otherwise they won't give me the job. So, like, that's a merit-based, that was the only merit-based job I've ever seen. And frankly, they shouldn't be making me do that much work. It was a lot of work just to get
Right, because what if they don't hire you? They still have your 10 ideas.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, they actually say to you, you can have the job, but yeah, you're going to make less money because you're a woman?
Yeah, well, they say, oh, you know, they only have the budget for this. You have to take less than the other guys, and they, you know, it's
God,
like,
why even tell you?
Yeah.
They should say you're making top dollar.
Well,
take the
that
job.
agent is the same agent still. You know, that agent just wasn't very
He needed you to
politically
know.
correct. He was like sort of like, I don't even think it was malicious. I think he was just really dumb. You know, like, I think he was just like somebody who just has foot and mouth disease and like doesn't really think about what he says.
Like, can you hear yourself talking right now?
But also, you know, we're at a time when like you could disparage women because like the other thing that made it really hard was like everyone thought women were equal and everyone talked about women as if we were equal. We just weren't treated equally. So you felt like you could insult sexism where you couldn't insult racism. Mm-hmm. So like, you know, the unconscious bias thing, basically. Like, people didn't know that they had unconscious bias, and so like if you ever said to someone in that whole period of like all these years of most of my career, if you ever said to someone, well, that's kind of sexist, they would be like, what are you talking about? Women are equal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Isn't it weird?
Yeah.
Because we were in that place for a long, long time, and I think we as women were feeling like, wait a minute, like it doesn't feel that way, like what's happening?
But the fact of the matter is, like I said earlier, I believed I was equal. Mm-hmm. You know, I believed I was equal too. So I wasn't, but I believed I was.
Right.
So I was part of the problem, you know, in that sense. And it wasn't until I got older and I looked back and I was like, wait, I was 25 when I had 3 years of shadowing experience in television and a half-hour-long short film with stars in distribution. And I did not get offered anything. And then I look at Damien Chazelle now, you know, but like back then, other 25-year-old like hotshots who had sometimes not even done that much, who were just getting handed things. When I looked back on that in retrospect with many years, I was like, that's very weird that I did not get handed anything.
Right.
You know, that I asked for things and didn't get them.
So at the time, you're thinking, oh, well, I just need to work harder and do a little
of
better,
course.
and I need to try harder. I
do
have more
feature
training
now. I need to do more plays. I need to show people more stuff. I need to have more scripts that I'm writing. So now I have like, you know, so now I'm going out with like 8 viable scripts, and I've written like 20, don't get me wrong, but I have like 8 viable scripts under my arm.
Yeah.
And so now I'm starting to do more short films again, this much later in my career, because those films are old and they're dated and nobody cares about them. And so now I'm making new films because now I actually have the 8 scripts under my arm. So it's like, okay, which script do you want? Do you want this drama based on a true story? Do you want one of these 6 comedies? This one even has a male lead. Here's some with women leads. Here's a 2-hander with a man and a woman. You know
what do you need? I got it.
Yeah,
I got it all.
Here's an ensemble woman's piece, like Bridesmaids. That's what's hot for you. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So now I've had the time while I didn't realize what was going on. Like you said, I gotta work harder. I have to have more product. And I like just spent most of my life creating product.
And I think we collectively bought that story for a long time. And it's only this year that I'm hearing people say, stop telling women they need more preparation and just let them in the door.
Yeah, exactly. And so like now I am up to direct my first feature finally. I just made a new short film because, you know, with stars and amazing production value and blah, blah, blah.
What's it called?
It's called Sorry Not Sorry, and it was inspired by the pretty famous William Carlos Williams poem from 1934 called This Is Just to Say. Mm-hmm. So I'll tell you the poem. It's very short, which is why it's my favorite poem. It's called This Is Just to Say. It goes, I have eaten the plums that were in the icebox and which you were probably saving for breakfast. Forgive me. They were delicious, so sweet and so cold. So basically, that was the inspiration, and I got the non-commercial rights to that poem, and it is in the film. Basically, it's the story of how a couple's one-upmanship escalates to ridiculous heights after a man eats his wife's plums. So it's very much in line with the Time's Up movement. Like, I told you not to eat the plums. Don't eat my fucking plums. You ate the plums. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's very,
hilarious.
I think it's very timely in that it's like, women in marriages have been taking this too.
Yeah.
For a long time, where it's like, you know, you tell your husband to do something or not to do something, they do whatever they want, and you just grin and bear it. Well, time's up.
Time's up.
Motherfuckers. You know, so
In every arena.
yeah,
Time is
exactly.
up.
So that's what the short film is about. It's a dark comedy, and it's been getting really good response so far. I just finished it like 1 month ago, so I'm just starting to submit to festivals, but I've already gotten into a few, which is kind of amazing because normally it takes like 3 or 4 months for you to find out you've gotten in, and I'm still waiting 3 or 4 months for other festivals that take 3 or 4 months, but
you're
I've
in,
already heard early on some that like this was exactly what they were looking for.
Fantastic.
So that's really great. So I feel really confident that I have like this new piece of material. Now I have 8 feature films under my arm, and one of them actually has some interest from a couple of companies. So I have in my mind that I'm going to direct that, and I've been planning to direct it for quite a while because it was the script that even before any of it, if someone had asked me, okay, which one of these are you going to direct first, I would have said that one. So that one's got some interest, and you know, people are asking me like, well, why should we let you direct it? And I was like, because I've prepared my whole life for a directing job, and time's up.
Yeah, because why wouldn't you?
You know? Why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't
but
you?
we can get this person who already has 2 or 3 features under their belt, and I'm like, and how did that person get their first opportunity? Yeah. This is my first opportunity, give it to me. And so like my attitude is just changed, because it's like when I look at all the work I've done,
you've
and
earned
how much of the work has been praised and gotten me other things, there's no reason.
Yes.
Except for that somewhere inside of someone's unconscious bias, they had doubt about me because of only one thing they could have had doubt about, because I always presented myself with confidence and strength and...
Carry yourself with the confidence of a mediocre white man.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think I always have carried myself with the confidence of a mediocre white man. You know?
I love that phrase so much.
Yeah. But it doesn't come off the same on me, and that's the only thing I can attribute it to, with that and bad luck, because like I said, there is luck involved. There is luck. You know, there's also bad luck. But like the one I'm up for now is a rom-com, and rom-coms have been severely out of vogue for about 8 years.
Yeah, could we bring them back, please?
Well, they're coming back because Netflix is having a huge success with rom-coms. There's also some other markets I'm finding out. Like, for example, my movie is being considered in part in Mexico as a Spanish language film, because rom-coms are the #1 box office draw in Mexico, it turns out. So like when you start thinking outside of the American box, you realize there are actually great opportunities in other countries for various genres.
Yeah,
in both television and film. Like in Europe, they are always looking for procedurals. So even if people are starting to get sick of procedurals here, which we aren't because they sell so well in Europe, you know, there's a great opportunity for procedurals in Europe, for example, procedural television. But rom-coms are hot in certain territories. They're just not hot as box office right now, but they are starting to be, because between Netflix and Crazy Rich Asians being #1 at the box office for 3 weeks in a row, so far, because when this airs, it might have been more weeks in a row. I don't know. I only know the 3 weeks at this particular juncture. But I think that they're going to start to see that there is money in rom-coms, and because of the women's movement, women are 50% of the audience and actually purchase more of the tickets and do like rom-coms. We just don't like bad rom-coms. So like when they put the label chick flick on it, that has an implication of a bad movie. And we also have taste. Like we'll watch a bad rom-com, we won't enjoy it, just like guys will watch a bad action movie. They'll still go to it. It doesn't mean it was a good movie. They'd still rather see, I heard Mission Impossible Fallout is fantastic. So like they still want to see action movies at that level. Like we still want to see rom-coms at the level of Bridesmaids if we have our choice.
Yeah.
And
why did they fall out to begin with? Like whoever got the notion that women aren't going to go see rom-coms?
Well, yeah. That is a very long, I think that's a really other long story about how the data is kept and how the data is distributed, because there's always been like a lot of rumors about like men make the decisions about what movies people are going to go to.
And the critics are men.
That was the rumor. And all the critics are men. That's a big problem. Rom-coms don't get as good of reviews. But they had this rumor that men were making the decisions, which wasn't even true in the first place, you know. But also wasn't based on any actual data of any kind. It was like, well, yeah, it looks like more men are going to the movies because you're making more movies for men, so it's a vicious cycle.
If you're only going to make superhero movies.
Yeah, then you are going to get more men at the box office. But if you made movies for other demographics, they would show up. I mean, black people prove it every single time a movie about black people comes out. And they're always like, oh my God, how did this movie become number one?
Known?
Yeah, like what a surprise. And it's like, why is this still a surprise to you guys? Just like circumstantially, it's obvious to everybody. If you actually did some numbers, you would find that, you know, and everyone know, like now they've done some numbers and they found that like Latinos are actually the largest movie-going audience. So it's like, where are the Latino movies? You know what I mean? Like you guys have known this for like 3 or 4 years now. You've had time to put out some movies where, you know,
what is the problem?
They spend more per capita on the movies than any other people in America. Make some movies for them. Like they aren't the hugest percentage, but they're a growing percentage, and they spend more per capita.
Yeah.
So it's like, and women, they are starting to do research where they're finding women are the ones holding the purse strings, both for advertising and for movie going.
So they make 80% of the buying decisions about everything.
But they just stuff that data down because those aren't the movies that the people making the decisions are interested in making. And I've thought about this too, like if I were a movie executive, like I'm not a fan of horror movies personally. I don't like to be scared. I don't like to have things I can't unsee in my brain because I'll have nightmares about them. But if I were an executive, I would have to develop horror movies. I wouldn't have a choice, you know? And I would probably be very annoyed every time I had to go home with a horror movie, as opposed to the movies in the genres that I prefer, which is every other genre, right?
But you would do your job.
I would do my job, but I would be annoyed the whole time. So maybe the horror movie that went through me would have a less good chance of getting through. So if you think about it that way, if a man isn't that interested in a rom-com, and he has to take it home, and the majority of executives making final decisions are still men by a lot, you know, then you're going to get a lot more men saying, no, this isn't interesting to me, you know.
So maybe we get women in all the seats.
Well, that's what we have to do.
That's all the decision-making spots.
Yeah, but it's been hard for the women at the top, too, because they've been working in a patriarchal office, you know, so they have to think like the men as much as they can, and so they also will try and think about like, oh, well, the person right above, like even if you're like the head of a studio, there's still like the board member above you is a guy, and like you still need to
What's Larry gonna think?
You need to be able to justify it if that movie does bomb. You want to keep your job, and the women have twice as hard of a time of keeping their job, so it's like you're going to spend twice as much time considering whether or not to greenlight a rom-com, because if it does bomb, which is a possibility, every movie can bomb.
Yeah.
You know, you just don't know.
There's a lot to untangle.
Yeah.
Culturally.
Yeah.
All right, but what do you make of kind of this moment that we're in?
Well, what's that expression they say when you have like reserved excitement?
Cautiously optimistic?
Cautiously optimistic. I'm cautiously optimistic. Like, I definitely haven't seen it before in my career, so that makes me optimistic. I definitely feel more empowered when I walk into a room and I see that men are more deferential to me than they ever have been, in a way where if I feel like I can call people out for the first time. I don't try to call people out in a way, I don't want to insult them.
But kindly bring things to their attention.
But I just want to bring something to their attention, like, hold on, let's take a step back.
Maybe you haven't thought of.
Why wouldn't I get this opportunity?
Right.
Think about that. And when you have to think about that, then it's like,
oh,
you know, then it's like, well, you haven't done it before, right? But neither have all these other guys who have gotten their opportunity. Why did you trust them and you didn't trust me?
Yeah, so try again.
You know? So like, I definitely feel like excited that I get to stand up for myself for the first time, you know, because I've been holding in a lot of anger, I guess, you know, without even knowing it, and holding in a lot of pain. And
it's the collective unbridled rage.
Yeah, there is a collective unbridled rage, and I love the feeling of it. I love the rage I'm feeling. I'm enjoying it. But
I've been shocked seeing it in like public groupings where there's a Q&A and the women stand up to speak and they're all furious. And I'm like, wow.
I think we need to be careful about like how much of the fury we ask in Q&As, because like there's a way to ask a question that doesn't put the person on the defensive. Like, you still want a reasonable answer from the person, and making them defensive doesn't help that.
You can't have a whole room attacking the one person on the panel.
Yeah, but, you know, like, ask the hard question for sure. Just ask it more like a journalist, maybe, instead of like, an angry, crazy person, you know, like, because we don't want to be treated like crazy people either.
Right.
But what I was going to say is the big thing that's come out of it for me is that I have now become entrenched in community after community of female filmmakers on every level. Like, I know so many women writers, directors, producers, cinematographers, production designers, composers, camera people, sound people. And now when it's time to crew up, for me or anyone asking me for references, I have resources I can go to find women to fill those jobs, you know, who are qualified and who have been qualified and overlooked a lot and who are now like able to work a lot more. Still on a smaller scale, unfortunately. Our women's communities are vast and we're great and we really are very supportive of each other, which is the opposite of how men have always portrayed us, by the way. That's another thing that's coming out is like, you know, can't have two women in a room, therefore women are always going to be at each other's throats. The fact is, in my women's communities, we are the opposite. Like, I have never really experienced that except once on a show when I worked with a woman who was like much older than me. She was like, she was from the old guard where that really was true, and she turned all the men in the room against me. There was only two of us on staff. She turned them all against me, and I didn't understand why. I was like,
there's room for one.
I didn't understand what was going on there. So that was like a shocking experience of like sexism on my second job, which actually came from a woman in this time. But she was an old guard woman, and she didn't get it. You know, that was okay, that there could be two of us and we could have different ages and different personalities. And she was always like, come to Mama Bear. She made it like it was her den, and I was the only person not invited to the den. So that was really annoying. But that was the only time I've ever experienced that in this whole business where women were against each other. And in my whole life with friendships, like, yeah, sometimes we have fights with our friends. It's natural. You have fights with your family. You have fights with people you love, you know. But we as a whole, I have found at least the people I know, tend to be like, really supportive and really want to help each other, and we all want to help, you know, the tide rise for all of us. So that's been great. Now, within those communities, we are still working on smaller scale. Like, you know, the scope of how much money we're able to raise for our movies, it still makes them very low budget indie level a lot of times. And it's hard to break out of that into the higher budget things. So we're still struggling as a community to break into higher budget stuff, because that's where the gatekeepers start to be, where it's not just about like, we can be entrepreneurs, do this together for ourselves. So that's one thing I've noticed. So I'm a member of the Alliance of Women Directors, and we have a new program called the Work in Progress program. And I was one of the guinea pigs who put my short film, Sorry Not Sorry, up for the very first work in progress thing. And so I basically handed out surveys, a room of 30 women, watched a few shorts, and we gave them each, we wrote our own surveys, and they got back feedback on the surveys. And one of the questions on my survey was, what festival do you think this is right for? You know, just so I could get other women's advice about like what would be good festivals for it. And I have to say, I was personally shocked by the low level of the festival compared to the fact that my scores were 8 to 10 out of 10 on most of the scorecards.
But the ambition of festivals?
But the ambition of festivals, I was suggested, was all these podunk festivals. It wasn't like, nobody was saying this could be at South by or Tribeca or Sundance. Everyone was naming these little festivals.
So we still have low expectations.
So there was like still like, and I didn't take that as a reflection of my film at all. I took that as a reflection of where these women see possibility. So I still think there's a dream bigger mentality that needs to grow amongst women, because we've gotten so used to putting ourselves down, you know.
So taking the crumbs.
Yeah. So like, if you're giving my film an 8 to a 10 score out of 10, and it's a work in progress, like I haven't even
It's not even done.
It as good as it was very close to done, but I hadn't even made it as great as it came out. You know, it was very, very close. But, you know, but they also gave me feedback, which I took, right? So now it's even better because I got some feedback from that series, from that session as well. And you're not saying I deserve to be at South by, then what is wrong with the mentality in this room?
Yeah, what's the problem?
You know, and I don't mean to insult the women in AWD. They're fantastic, and everybody's out there doing stuff, and I love the group.
They are.
But I do want us as a whole, as a community, to like set our expectations a lot higher.
Yeah.
And just like you said, have the confidence of a mildly talented white man. You know. Yeah, and I would even say that I went through a phase in my career where I learned to be more self-deprecating, where I learned to put myself down.
Tone it down
more.
a notch.
Yeah. And that I'm coming out of that phase finally because of this movement, you know, because like as you heard from the way I approached the beginning of my career, which I told you about, you know, I was very confident, very ambitious, and I didn't see any blocks to my career success. I didn't see any reason there would be any. I had gone to a good school, UCLA. I had graduated into an amazing job. I had all the experience I needed. I had a film that would reach the highest levels of success. I didn't have any reason to believe that everything wasn't going to happen for me. And then when the next thing started happening, like my agent wondering why people liked me in a room and getting fired from my first job because I had a female point of view, and I expressed that I thought maybe they would want that, in, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
you're like, what is
then
happening
getting
here?
another job where a woman pushed me away, and then, you know, going out into the world and having, and the director meeting when I wanted to be an assistant again, where the director was intimidated by my experience to be his assistant. Like, I started to feel like, oh, people aren't responding well to my confidence and my ambition. I need to squash that. I need to squash
adjust
that more, you know? So I did, and I think that then my career suffered greatly because I wasn't moving forward with my natural levels of confidence. And I wasn't getting the response that I was getting when I was acting more confident in the positive way. But I also wasn't getting the negative responses that I had noticed from the confidence.
It's a tricky
So it's a
formula.
very hard line to walk. But now I'm older, and I feel like I should have confidence because I have so much experience and because I have so much life history, and I've been through so many phases of this business. Plus, now I'm allowed to have confidence because of the Time's Up movement. And because I can walk into a room and say, because time's up.
Yeah.
You know, that's why.
It's given us so much language, I think.
Yeah.
To help.
Yeah.
Which is great. Okay, what other advice do you have for young women just starting out?
I don't know. Like, the first thing that came to mind, because like that's such a broad question.
Yeah.
I don't even know where to. Like, what are they trying to do? You know, like what job are they trying to have? The first piece of advice is say yes to everything. Just say yes. Don't be above anything. Don't be better than anything, but then also recognize when you've been there long enough. So like if you're taking a PA job so you can learn, and you have to say yes to everybody and be like, what can I do for you? What's next? You know, but recognize if people are abusing you or taking advantage of you. That is your job, a little bit, to be abused when you're a PA, but not sexually, for example, not...
Just to be clear.
Just you know, have clear boundaries of where the job ends, but also know that if you've been a PA for 3 years, you should be moving up.
Yeah, time to grow.
You should be working really hard on that, and people should be giving you a chance, and stand up for yourself, ask for what you want. You know, and that's another thing I would say to any screenwriter, male or female, is like, be flexible. You're not the boss at the beginning. You know, you need to be willing. Don't like be able to defend your script because of logical reasons why, oh, I wrote this because this is what the character is thinking right now, and you can explain it to them. But if they still want to change it to their way, then at that point you have to be like, okay, well, you're the one paying me, so I'll do what you want. And you might have to let go of your script being as good as you wanted it to be, or the final film being as good as you wanted it to be, because ultimately at some point in your career, you know, getting something made
is huge.
Is important. And
yeah.
It's because like when you go out in the world and people are like, you're a writer director, and like, oh, have you done something I've seen? You know, like even if the movie was shitty, you could be like, my script was much better than how the film came out. If you want to read the original script, I'm happy to share it with you.
But it got made.
You know, but it got made,
and so
people
many
have
don't.
heard of it, and people are impressed by the fact that you even got a movie made at all.
Yeah.
So that, you know, at some point, like at the beginning of your career, then as you go further into your career and you have more of a name, then you can stand up for yourself much more. But at the beginning, you just do need to be flexible, because like I definitely had some deals that I was a producer on fall through because the writer would go in and be like, but no, it has to be like this because, you know,
it's my baby.
And I would be there in the meeting listening as a producer going, no, actually the executive is sending this movie in the right direction.
Yeah.
They're in the right.
They might
and
have
you're
a good
fighting
idea.
for it, and now they're not buying it because you're fighting, you know? So
be smart.
You just keep an open mind. Keep an open mind. These executives, a lot of them actually are pretty good at their jobs. But
Yeah.
more importantly, if they're buying it for their company, they're very in tune with what their company's mandate is. And they're only interested in making a movie that fits their company's mandate. So they have a meeting, you know, every week about like, okay, we're looking for this kind of script, and you're gonna get your script sold because it happens to be that kind of script, or because they see a vision for how it could be that kind of script. and that's going to mean letting go of what your script was so it can fit their mandate.
Yeah.
And it's painful and heartbreaking, but it also is like the makings of a career.
You have to have a broad view.
Yeah, have a big view. Like,
the
this shouldn't be your last project. And by the way, the more projects you have under your belt, the more projects you've written, the less you feel precious about the one they're working on. If you've only written one script and they want to change everything, you're not going to want to do it.
Right.
But if you've written 3 or 4 scripts and only one of them is getting developed and they want to change everything, you'll just focus your love and attention on the scripts that aren't in that development process.
Great advice.
You know, those still get to be your scripts. Yeah.
And you also have a podcast.
Oh, well, I don't have a podcast, but I'm a host on a podcast, which is, I am one of the hosts on Third and Fairfax, which is the Writers Guild official podcast.
Fantastic.
So we basically interview very high-level writers of TV and film and web series. And actually, recently, I even interviewed Seth Meyers. So late-night shows also.
Yes.
We've started to do.
I heard that. It was great.
Oh, yeah, thanks. I love that interview. It was hard because we didn't have a lot of time, but I learned so much because I didn't know how Saturday Night Live operates or how a late show operates. And because we're the Writers Guild, sometimes we forget certain niches of our operation, and it was a great privilege to get to kind of find out that information from Seth Meyers himself, who was the showrunner of Saturday Night Live for years and now has his own late night show. And but I've interviewed so many great people, and so have the other hosts as well. And if you're interested in writing as a career, you really need to listen to that podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say, if you're listening to this, you're going to want to listen to that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
You've been listening to The Other 50%, a herstory of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. I'd like to thank Monique Sorgen for sharing her story. And special thanks to Jay Rowe, Danny Rosner, and Allison McQuaid for the music. Please find us on your favorite podcast provider and leave a review. And of course, on our website, theother50%.com, all spelled out in letters, for added features, bios of our guests, and the merch. You can also follow us on all the social media platforms, and also go subscribe to Exit 38 and the Kiss My Age show. Thanks for listening. See you next time.